So this is mindfulness. So it begins with a question. Are you a mindful person? So when I ask you that question, what is it that you think about? So what does that mean to you? Does it translate more to the idea of having a mind full of stuff? Like ideas, thoughts, and interpretations of feelings. We talk a lot about that stuff. Is your mind full of stuff? Or is it more directed, more about the act of being aware and conscious of all things? When I think the traditional, definition, when somebody says, oh, that's a mindful person, I think it's connected towards like caring, thoughtful, and things like that. But if you really look at the macro of that, what it means to be mindful is, it's interesting how people say they want to be on my live video. That's too risky on Instagram because I don't know who these people are. So anyway, what I'm talking about right now is that we have this normal interpretation of it, but I want to go a little bit deeper. The idea of being like the macro of it is being aware and conscious of all things. I think that's one of the greatest things that we can do is just spend more time being conscious. And I've been thinking a lot lately about why, like when you become conscious versus unconscious, it's kind of like lights off versus lights on. But what's interesting to think about is why do we, recruit and promote certain thoughts into consciousness and others we leave in the dark? Because we know that we have like 40, 60, 70,000 thoughts a day. And we only like take 5% of them out and actually recognize them. So for the most part, we're walking around in the dark, right? But why do we select certain ones and bring them into the light? I've been thinking about that. So we think about the good, the bad, the positive, the negative, right? So the kind or the unkind. So what's interesting about the act of mindfulness is that it's always referring to now. This is a cool thought. So this is the wake up right here. It's always about now. So the practice of what we can call conscious experience, the conscious experience is always happening in the now. Isn't that interesting, right? You can become conscious and aware of something that's happened in the past, but that experience of being conscious is happening in the now. It's fun to think about that. So the author of a book, I quoted from him yesterday as well. This is once again a fantastic book for anybody who's interested in the idea of waking up. Sam Harris, just really, really cool stuff. Says it's a simple state. He's talking about the idea of the conscious experience. It's a simple state of clear, non-judgmental, and undistracted attention to the contents of consciousness, whether pleasant or unpleasant. So we're acceptance of the fact that there's polars, right? So my question is this, back to me. If the perception of the conscious experience is being perceived by the perceiver, right? You and I. So this conscious experience, if we recognize that when you become conscious and aware or mindful of something, that's an experience that's being perceived by the perceiver, right? You and I. But we also have to recognize that our brain and our operating system, back to you, Risa, a lot of people are not aware that yesterday is what boots up today. And a lot of people are not aware that our brains have been programmed since birth, right? When we're born, our brains are underdeveloped. And our brains, while they're developing, are starting to be programmed by our programmers, our mother, father, teacher, preacher, right? So once we become aware of that, we start to have to question whether or not the perceiver is perceiving things the way they are or the way that we've learned to perceive them, right? You ever notice how you can get in like a bad mood and somebody says, why are you in a bad mood? And you're just like looking at the world in a glum way and you can't figure it out. So I forgive you for not what you do. You were taught to do that. So is it possible that your experience of the conscious, see, what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to remove the blindfolds from you for the day so you can start observing the world as it is rather than as you've been taught to, because that's where the breakthrough is. Is it possible that your experience of the conscious experience may be skewed or leveraged to perceive what you've been taught to perceive? Chew on that one for a second. Right? So what do we do about this? Because this is true. This is what's happening. We've been taught and leveraged to see things a certain way. So what do we do about this? This possible misdirection of our attention and perception. Maybe it's being misdirected. right? And just like I said, before with Risa, just acknowledge it first. Don't try to fix it all. The truth is that we our brains don't have the capacity to really understand what the hell's going on here. So we just make it up for the most part. But this is about you having a better life experience. So I believe the solution is found through the emptying of the mind. So here's an interesting thing. To be able to see clearly, I'm saying you must empty your mind because your mind is getting in the way. So this idea of saying, I got to get out of my way. What does that mean when you say, I got to get out of my way? Right. So we have to empty the mind. So there's many, many ways to do that. Some of the prominent ways people are doing that today is to meditation. I love Karma Minds, right? That's how you bypass the analytical mind. And there's a lot of just interesting science going on, love it or hate it, about psychedelics and DMT and all of these things that are removing the construct of the mind so that you can see something. So, careful with your approach, but the idea of emptying the mind so that you can see clearly is what I'm talking about. Remember, we're talking about mindfulness here, right? So it's about allowing yourself to mindlessly. Isn't that interesting? If you do something mindlessly, when I did something mindlessly when I was a kid, that was looked at as a bad thing. So to do something mindlessly, allow yourself to do that and interface with this conscious experience and see it for the first time with no suggestion of what's worth looking at or why. Right? No coercion into what you should be looking at or what is good or bad. Just looking at things. So you have to let go of a lot of stuff. That's why I teach people to say, and just question things. Question how you feel. Question if what you're seeing is what you're seeing or if there's something else. In my book, I teach this concept of holographic vision. Walk around something first before you judge, because you're probably judging it the way you were taught to. So I look at that as a naked perception. So what you can do today is just walk around naked, right? Just naked perception. Interesting. I don't know how I feel about that yet, but I appreciate the experience, right? Man, your whole life will change. So with all of your mind in the sense of its potential, right? So when you're naked and mindless, you're still using the full potential of your mind. However, empty of past experiences and lessons taught to you by others that may have shared their opinions and labeled them as reality or fact. So it's fun to question when you look at reality or fact. A lot of you call me up and you'll say, this is how I feel, right? Now, what I hear is that doesn't make it reality. It just means it's how you feel. So the question I always say is, I wonder why you feel that way, right? But when you're feeling something and you attach your feelings to reality, that's your struggle. Is you think you say this is how I feel, but you're also in turn saying, so it must be true, right? Pause on that. So mindfulness to me is just that, allowing your mind's full potential to interface with a happening for the first time with a curious and compassionate heart. Curious meaning, I wonder, and compassionate means that you're open to what is happening from that end of the experience, right? You're compassionate. You don't already know the answer. You're not judging. So you just might find out what's really going on, or at least get closer to it than your programmed mind would have. So that's what you're doing right now, Risa. You're not going to be perfect today, but because you're becoming aware of that boot up of yesterday, you're getting closer. And that's all we really can do. Becoming the dominant force in your life doesn't mean arriving somewhere. It means you're getting closer. So empty your mind today and see the world as it is. Right now, if you're going to be using psychedelics, I recommend that you call in sick to work first. That's a joke, obviously. Makes sense? I sure hope it does. So I love and appreciate you. So much fun to do this in the morning. I hope that you share this with people. Share the video, share the podcast. I'm not going anywhere. And once I get back from this trip in Peru, I would assume that my rise ups are going to get quite interesting. So love and appreciate you all. Have an amazing day. And, just realize that life might not be what you think, right? So think about it. Have a great day.